Snow had been falling since morning, soft but steady, until the station yard lay white and silent, the platform boards creaking under the weight of frost. The evening sky was turning to bruised purple when Elias Turner dismounted from his horse and tied the reins to a post. He had been on his way through town only to fetch salt and flour, yet something in the air pulled him to linger, to stand still and listen to the whispering hush of winter pressing close. His broad hat brim caught flakes that melted on his weathered face. He had not expected company. He had not expected salvation to beg him in the shape of two little girls. They came hand in hand, no taller than his waist, their small boots sinking into the snow. Their prairie dresses were threadbare, patched and torn, their shawls barely enough to keep out the cold. They moved timidly yet with purpose, their cheeks streaked with tears, their breath visible as faint wisps. One girl, Mary, spoke first, her voice trembling like a reed in the wind. "They tied our mama and cut her hair. Please help." The other, Martha, nodded fiercely, as if fear could not quench the urgency in her chest. Her lips trembled, but her eyes locked on his, daring him to turn away. Elias knelt down slowly, the leather of his coat groaning, his gloved hand resting on one bent knee. His gray eyes, usually quiet as river stones, softened. He was not a man given to words. Words had failed him years ago, when he had buried his wife and the child she carried. Since then silence had been his companion. But silence was not what these girls needed. Still, he did not answer quickly. He only asked with his gaze where? Martha pulled on his sleeve, urging him toward the far corner of the abandoned station house. Elias rose, his boots crunching snow, and followed. The twins led him past a leaning fence and into a shadowed corner of the station's storage room, where the scent of coal dust and wet wood mingled. There, on the floorboards, sat a woman bound with rough hemp rope, her dress stained, her dark hair hacked unevenly, shorn like an animal's. Her head drooped, but when Elias approached, her eyes lifted. Green eyes clouded with humiliation, yet alive. Clara May. She could not have been more than 27. Her cheeks were bruised, her lips split, her dignity stripped away by cruel hands. The twins dropped to their knees beside her, clutching at her sleeves. Clara whispered their names, her voice ragged but tender. Elias crouched low and took a knife from his belt. He sliced the rope without ceremony, the fibers snapping. Clara gasped as her arms fell free, the raw grooves on her wrists angry against her pale skin. Elias shrugged off his coat and laid it gently over her shoulders. The act was simple, wordless, but heavy with a meaning she had not felt in months: respect. A sound stirred behind him. The station keeper, old Jonas Pratt, leaned on the doorframe, his mustache twitching as he spat tobacco into the snow. "You oughta leave her be, Elias. Some women bring shame wherever they go. That one's cursed by her own kin." He muttered it with the indifference of a man who had long given up kindness. Elias straightened slowly, his tall frame shadowing Clara and the twins. He looked at Jonas with a silence that burned hotter than any shouted threat. Jonas shuffled back, muttering, and closed the door. Elias lifted Clara into his arms. She was light, too light, the hollows of her body telling of long hunger and weary nights. Her head pressed weakly against his chest, strands of uneven hair falling over his arm. The twins followed close, trudging through snow with small determined steps. No townsfolk came forward. A few stared, whispering behind gloves. Judgment had many tongues, but not a single helping hand. Elias did not look at them. He walked to his horse, set Clara gently upon the saddle, lifted the twins behind her, and took the reins. He led them away on foot, snow crunching beneath his boots, each step carrying them farther from scorn and nearer to the lonely safety of his land. The cabin rose out of the valley like a memory of shelter. Pine logs darkened by years, chimney smoke curling soft into the pale sky. Snow draped the roof, icicles hanging like teeth at the eaves. Inside, the fire crackled low. Elias stoked it high, the blaze casting amber light across rough-hewn walls. He brought blankets, water, what bread and broth he had. Clara sat near the fire, her body shaking as warmth reached through her numbness. Mary and Martha pressed against her, never letting go of her arms. Elias worked quietly, his every motion careful, his large hands surprising in their gentleness. He set broth before Clara. She sipped, eyes never rising to his, shame knotting her throat. Through the first nights, silence reigned. Clara wrapped a shawl about her head, hiding her shorn hair. She flinched when Elias drew near, though his steps were never harsh. She tended her daughters with trembling strength, but when alone, she wept silently. Elias noticed, though he never intruded. He had lived with silence long enough to recognize the sound of muffled grief. The twins began to break it. Mary placed dried flowers in a tin cup and set it on the table. Martha asked Elias why he had no children. His answer was quiet. "Once I did, but the Lord had other plans." Clara glanced up at him then, surprised by the sorrow threaded into his steady voice. Days passed, and the girls grew braver. Elias taught them how to brush his horse, how to scatter feed for the chickens. Their laughter returned, shy at first, then freer. Clara watched through the window, shawl pulled tight, her eyes filling. She had not heard her daughters laugh since before her husband left for distant wars, leaving her to his kin's cruelty. She saw Elias kneel in the snow to tie Mary's loosened boot, his rough hands careful as a prayer. She saw Martha clutch his sleeve, tugging him toward the barn, and Elias following as though he belonged to them already. Something stirred in Clara's chest, something dangerous, something she had almost forgotten, hope. But word spread, as it always does. Abigail Holt, a neighbor with a tongue sharper than a saw blade, came to the cabin one morning, her bonnet dusted with frost. She spoke to Elias in a low, urgent voice, meant to be overheard. "A man like you ought not take in a woman with a past like hers. You'll find nothing but ruin." Clara sat near the hearth, her face burning though she turned away. She clutched the shawl tighter. Elias looked at Abigail for a long moment. Then, without a word, he closed the door between them. The thud of it echoed through the cabin. Clara's tears fell fast. She whispered to the fire that she would not stay long, that she would leave once she had strength. Elias heard, but he said nothing. His silence was not rejection. It was protection, steady and patient. Snowstorms came heavy, blanketing the valley in white. Supplies grew thin. Elias rose before dawn to chop wood, his breath steaming, the axe ringing in cold air. Clara watched him through frost-laced glass. One morning she stepped outside, shawl wrapped, and tried to carry kindling. Her arms shook, but she bore it to the woodpile. Elias saw her, and though a frown touched his brow, he let her help. They worked in rhythm, their breaths clouds in the sharp air. Their silence was not emptiness anymore. It was shared labor, shared survival. That night, Clara removed her shawl by the fire. Her shorn hair glistened in the firelight, uneven, raw. She looked at Elias, trembling. He met her gaze, his eyes steady, and did not flinch. He did not see her shame. He saw her courage in uncovering it. And for the first time, she breathed without fear. But the world outside their cabin would not let them be. Clara's in-laws returned, emboldened by gossip, riding up with rough men at their sides. They knocked hard, fists echoing against the wood. The twins clung to Clara. Elias opened the door, filling the frame, rifle leaning against the wall but untouched. The men sneered, demanding Clara back, calling her a burden, a shame. Elias's voice came low and steady, carrying more weight than thunder. "She's under my roof now. If you want her, you'll have to take her through me." His height, his calm ferocity, made them falter. They muttered threats and curses, but one by one they stepped back into the snow. Clara fell to her knees, sobbing, begging Elias not to risk himself for her. He bent low, his voice quiet but firm. "You've carried enough. Let me carry the rest." That night the wind howled, a blizzard lashing the cabin walls. The fire threatened to die. Elias worked through the night, hauling wood, keeping warmth alive. His shoulders ached, his breath ragged. Clara rose, weak but determined, and joined him. Together they fed the fire, shielding their daughters under blankets. Side by side they endured, and the storm passed, leaving silence heavy as a blessing. In the dawn light, Clara laid her hand gently over Elias's scarred knuckles. For the first time, he did not withdraw. Morning brought new confrontation. The in-laws returned, anger sharpened. Townsfolk gathered to watch. Snow still drifted from the eaves as Elias stepped out onto the porch, rifle in hand, but he did not raise it. His voice rang against the cold. This woman is no one's shame. She is mother to her children. She is under my protection. If you cannot honor her, then you'll find no place here. His words fell heavy, striking harder than any bullet. Silence rippled through the crowd. The men faltered, their bluster unraveling. One spat, another cursed, but none dared step forward. Slowly, they turned, retreating into the white fields. Clara, trembling, came to the doorway. She reached for Elias's hand, her fingers small and shaking in his. The twins pressed close, their faces bright with tears. Elias turned to her, his voice gentler now, almost breaking. If you wish it, I will marry you. Not for scandal, not for show. For shelter, for dignity. For love that doesn't need words. Clara's breath caught. Her tears spilled, but she nodded, her lips forming the quietest yes. Snow fell soft as blessings around them, each flake catching the morning light. Elias took his coat and draped it over her shoulders, not as rescuer but as husband-to-be. The twins clung to them both, laughter trembling out between sobs. Behind them, the cabin glowed with firelight, a home born not of chance but of courage. And so the valley held its silence, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not the silence of loneliness, but of peace, of vows spoken without need of a preacher's words. Sometimes love is not found in ballrooms or declared in grand speeches. Sometimes it is found in a man who will not flinch at shame, and in a woman who dares to hope again. Sometimes it is born in the hush of snow and the crackle of a cabin fire, in small hands clutching close, in burdens lifted without condition. That was how a family was not discovered but made, in a winter that began in sorrow and ended in vows. And now, dear friend listening by your own fire, if this tale touched your heart, I ask you from where you are watching. Tell me in the comments. And if you would hear another story even deeper than this one, click on the tale waiting for you on the screen. Until then, may kindness be your fire in the cold, and may you never flinch when love comes to your door.